like to call this this study session to order. And our first item will be the Safe Access for Everyone public engagement. It'll be introduced by Kelly Brooks.
Thank you very much for having us. So tonight I am joined by Jessica Pickle. She's with JLA Public Involvement. And we wanted to take some time tonight. We have quite a bit of time. Should be a relaxed conversation. We may not need the full hour, but we have it. To talk about our approach to engagement for the SAFE program primarily. So that's what Jessica's here to cover. I was also asked to touch specifically on our Selwood and Ardenwald projects, just give a project update on those two things. So at the end of this, I have a couple of slides just to talk through schedule and timing around those two in particular. But if you'll recall when we were developing, I think it's actually been almost exactly a year since I started thinking about this program. I know quite a bit more than I did a year ago, thankfully. But we did talk a lot about the many issues that we were gonna need to grapple with as we began building out the sidewalk network in Milwaukee, encroachments being one of them. And we knew that we were gonna need a healthy team of folks to help us have conversations with the public. And that really is what Jessica's here to do, and has already kind of feels like a member of our team. As we dove into the program, it became apparent to me, and it became even more apparent to, I think, Jessica when she got on board, that we're kind of in a rolling start. We're on a constant rolling start. We have a set of projects that are in design, a set of projects that are out to bid, another set of larger projects that require a larger set of community dialogues. I mean, they're all a little bit different. And so what we've found is some things we need to respond to really quickly and are evolving pretty fast, like the diverter. Some things have a little bit of a longer timeline, and we approach those a little bit differently. So what you'll see here tonight is kind of what we've come up with that we feel like best suits our needs. And so I think with that, I'm just going to hand it over to Jessica for her to walk through the different components of the engagement program, and also, frankly, a lot of engagement that's already been done. We've been pretty busy lately talking to folks, particularly around Linwood. So with that, Jessica, I'll hand it off to you, and then, like I said, when you're done, I'll touch in on the two Selwood and Ardenwald projects specifically.
Thanks, Kelly. So I don't feel like I need to do much introduction about the SAFE program to you.
Microphone.
Sorry. But I think
you can
that
move it forward to you.
Thank you. But as Kelly mentioned, some of the projects are on different timelines, and so JLA has been contracted for phase 1. So the SAFE program is going to include improvements over 9 years, but phase 1 is the first 3 years, and in the first 3 years, there's going to be 11 projects that we're going to address improvements in. There are currently really 3 that are active, including the Linwood-Monroe intersection. So we'll get into that in a moment. And as Kelly mentioned, JLA Public Involvement has been contracted to support the city with public engagement. We've been providing this type of work for a variety of projects, and we're working in the city of Milwaukee with the Milwaukee Bay Park, and so we're excited to be working on this effort, and as Kelly mentioned, I already feel very much a part of this team. So tonight, we wanted to walk through all of the different components to the outreach plan that we've developed collaboratively. We also have some draft performance measures. So those are metrics that we're hoping to provide to the public that show what progress we're making, how we're, what successes we've had, and so we wanted to get your thoughts on that. And we have been out in the community, so we've got some updates on what we're hearing from folks. And I keep hitting the wrong button here. So I don't have to tell you this, with a program like SAFE, there's a wide variety of perspectives and interests from the community, and I think that one of the things that's going to be really helpful for anybody who has to communicate about this program is to have a set of key messages that all of us can speak to and be consistent. And so we have developed a list of topics for key messages that we wanted to run by you tonight and see if there's anything else that we need to add to this list. We're finalizing the actual messages themselves currently, but what we're planning to address with our key messages are that the SAFE program supports the city's vision and climate goals, that it helps the city meet safe routes to schools goals. Everyone benefits from the improvements being made with this program. So even if you don't regularly walk to work or, school, you're at some point probably going to walk on one of the sidewalks where we're going to be making improvements. And I think that sometimes people kind of forget that connection. Whenever possible, the design team will design around trees to avoid removal. We know that that's an important thing for the community. Some properties have encroachments, and so there's going to be a lot of communication just about what an encroachment is, what it means, how we're going to work with the property owners, because I think that the design team is really committed to making sure to make it as pain-free on the property owners as possible, but there are going to be some things that have to be removed in order for us to make those improvements. So what does that mean? I think that the other thing, too, is that there are some encroachments that are going to need to be addressed as a part of SAFE, but then there's other encroachments that are not necessarily going to be addressed because of SAFE, and so there's some communication that has to happen with that as well. The SAFE fee differs from the street fee. I think that's kind of confusing for some folks. So we're going to make that information available on the website and just make sure that people can speak to that. And we're going to highlight that project progress. So the website's going to be much more robust and up to date, provide all the news and those key metrics that I spoke to earlier.
Is there anything else you all would
Thanks,
kind of consider to be a key message that we're not touching on that list?
The only thing, the bullet point about the encroachments, I would say some properties have encroachments into the right-of-way.
Correct, yes.
Because some people are going to go, encroachments?
Yep.
What?
Yeah.
What am I encroaching on?
Yeah, thank you.
So that doesn't say anything about ADA. Shouldn't we say something about
Yes.
it's working us toward
Yeah,
ADA
absolutely.
compliance?
Yeah, it's kind of an obvious one that we missed, so thank you.
Yeah, we could add a bullet point about accessible for all users.
Yeah.
And most people don't know ADA, but they
Actually, I'm surprised
really.
often by how many people do know what ADA is. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely add it. We can add a bullet. Is there anything else that is glaringly?
Anything that's come up in your conversations with folks?
No.
Okay. So as a part of our scope, we're planning to do 3 public events. And so we're thinking that we'll do 1 per year, and those might look like a public celebration, or it could look like an open house. We need to kind of decide what's appropriate at the time, but I think that ultimately this will be our opportunity to just kind of be available to everyone in the community to show them what we're working on, what progress has been made, do a little bit of a presentation on what we're hoping to accomplish with this project, and just allow people to speak and interact with city staff and the design team. It's just really nice for people to be able to know that they can reach you besides just seeing all the communications coming out. Plus, this
would be general to the SAFE projects in Phase 1 generally, as opposed to project-specific ones?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I should back up and say that I kind of imagine the communications and outreach in like several layers. So there's like the overall general public, larger layer, which is like the website and fact sheets, and we'll make sure to have, wide like community drop-in open houses or events. But then when it gets down to the actual projects themselves, most people are going to be mostly concerned about the things that are around their house or around their work and their, which routes they take and travel on a daily basis. And so we'll do more targeted outreach for each of the specific projects. So for example, with the Linwood-Monroe intersection, we're doing a mailing, but it's only to a half mile around the radius of that intersection versus citywide, because it's crazy expensive to be able to, do a mailing that large. So it is going to be done in tiers. And, we'll be communicating about each of these projects as they get more activity. So, we won't have a lot to share on some of the projects that are included in that list of 11 immediately, but the ones that are active we'll be communicating about immediately.
So it occurs to me that we might want to, particularly in this first phase, be getting really great before and after photos and even maybe videos, so that as we're moving through the phases, we can kind of illustrate, look how much safer it is for kids to walk to school, or look how, we've changed this, and this is what's coming to your neighborhood now. Or
That's a great thought. In fact, and it's on this slide, we are going to be doing a video. And it's easy enough for us to get B-roll of all the project areas, so that way we can, because we're going to do a wrap-up video, so we can actually do those comparisons in a video at the end of this program.
But even like moments of a child trying to walk down the side of a road that doesn't have a sidewalk, and then...
Yeah, I'm not a good photographer, but when I was out on Linwood the other day, there was this perilously perched little pink tricycle, right on the thing, so I took a picture. So I hear you, and we...
Chair people, there's all kinds of... I see it all the time. 30 seconds. Almost daily.
So we should, and I'm hearing us say that we will, and we actually came up to tonight just putting this together. We're like, we need to start getting more pictures. So it's a good time to get them.
From Lisa's question, did you say this is what's going to occur in phase 1 only?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's just because the contract that we have with them is for phase 1. So
I just didn't.
Yeah.
And you said some celebrations. I mean, the new stairs to the Tacoma Johnson Creek station just opened, and zero fanfare. And the the neighborhood has been asking for that forever.
Interesting.
And so I think that it's important to highlight it for people so that they can.
Yeah.
I mean, something big.
TriMet missed a bet there, because that's...
Yeah, so,
don't
just take opportunities for
was.
important ones, when and if anything happens, near Linwood Elementary, that is absolutely time
if it hadn't been for your Facebook
huge
post,
celebration.
Most people wouldn't know anything.
Unless you,
so. Because I don't use that hardly ever. So.
No, and that's the difference maker between someone taking transit and not taking transit. An additional 5 minutes of walking for some people is the decision point. So.
Yeah, I appreciate that. That's also why I'm really glad Jessica's here, because I will tell you, it's a shortcoming of mine. I kind of get into the crank it out kind of, and I move on to the next thing, and I'm stressing about the next thing, and I forget to stop and celebrate. And Jessica's good at that's JLA. That's why it's built into their scope of work, is to make sure we stop and celebrate. So I think these events, again, as we've originally envisioned, I was thinking more classic project schedule, an open house, a middle review phase, a final review, and as I've learned more about how this is rolling out, I think we have opportunities to make those what we need them to be. So we can include project information, we can include a celebratory element. I think we have some flexibility to make those be what we need them to be.
Yeah, and I don't even mean, big parties, but even just celebrating it on a website, and even if it includes just a few photographs and videos of, I think that can be valuable too.
Well, I'm going to speak to this in a couple of slides, but I was out knocking on doors yesterday, talking with neighbors about Linwood and Monroe's intersection updates, and I feel like some of the neighbors were like, finally. So even just being out there and talking with people face to face has been really great, because people can see that progress is happening, and they're able to talk with staff about it.
We can get video.
Not everyone's doing
that. The comments that we're receiving are not always like that. So we're also planning on doing some neighborhood walking tours, so that way people can walk with staff, talk about, look at where the actual sidewalk will be aligned, talk about if there's trees, what it would look like, just bring people along with the design process, because I think that people feel frustrated when decisions are made and they're not included in that. So it's just a really nice way to make sure that the community and the neighbors feel good about what's being made and that they understand it, because I think our biggest danger here is misinformation. So we're going to do that for all the 7 neighborhoods and then in the industrial district as well.
And I'll just add, this idea actually came directly from conversations with Hector Campbell around the home project going into. They were asking, what's going to happen, and it would be nice if we could get more engaged. And so we pulled that into the scope and then broadened it out to the other neighborhoods as well. But that actually came from them as a concept. So.
Well, walking tours, great. Making sure that not just walkers have a way to engage in that, maybe a broad, making sure that we've got perspectives from, folks with kids, folks who are using mobility devices to get around. Because I know that some of those places are really, really uncomfortable for a lot of users, and so I don't know if there's some way to just make sure that we can assist, letting people know that I know this is not typically a route that you can use because you can't use it, it's not safe for you, but somehow getting, some...
I agree, and I think some of it's how we talk about it that could change and be more inclusive. I also think I'm learning a little bit as I go about how to get the word out a little more broadly. So even just some of the work we're doing downtown and the issues that we're needing to work through in terms of wayfinding for people that are sight impaired is different, right? So how do you do that? And so which groups we're having, needing to reach out to and engage with to learn what solutions need to be in place.
Right.
For different communities. We're getting better as we're going, but if there are specific groups or organizations that you're aware of that could help us get smarter faster, please let us know. But we try to keep that top of mind.
Yeah, thanks.
And we'll be talking with PSAC as well, so they'll also be really helpful, I think, with that. And robust property owner outreach includes that. So we, won't only be doing the walking tours. We will, create other opportunities for people to come to us, or we'll be going to other neighborhood meetings. So that way, those that are not comfortable or able to do a walking tour will be able to still provide feedback. We're going to do presentations to City Council, the NDAs, and PSAC. We're planning on including newsletters in the pilot. So it's going to be a double-sided 8.5 by 11 that's going to be more than just, it's kind of like what I talked about before with the website, where it's going to be, here's what we've done, here's the newsworthy things, here's what's coming, here's a schedule, and here are some of the wins. And so we're hoping to do that every 6 months, so that way people are just always informed on what's happening with this program.
You said that's going to be an insert in the pilot? So it'll also be something that, like, once the farmers market starts back up again, we can hand them out at the
Absolutely.
farmers market when we have the community booth.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Project flyers, so those will be more specific to the actual projects themselves, and a lot of those will actually become mailers. Fact sheets. We're going to talk about the performance measure tracking, website updates, so that's going to be on a weekly basis. And JLA is actually doing we're building out some web parts on the website, so we can do some updating on our end too, to make sure that there's going to be an interactive map that is going to have a lot of information. So as things evolve, because things are happening pretty quickly, we can make sure that website's pretty up to date. Social media. We've got 2 videos. There's an overview video and then a wrap-up video. So those photos that we talked about are going to be really great for that wrap-up video, so we can show the before and after. Utility bill inserts, and then obviously we're collecting comments and tracking everybody who's interested in this project, and the comments are rolling in. So we are responding to them as quickly as we're able to, because some of it requires us to actually dig in to the projects. So, but it's been good. Any questions on that?
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
With respect to presentations, do you
Sure.
plan on doing presentations? I mean, the groups that you're presenting to, they'll be fairly familiar with the program already.
Yeah.
To schools, like a PTA meeting, or to any other kind of groups where it's an educational thing and they're learning about what's going on as opposed to
Sure, yeah.
A Rotary Club?
Rotary or any
Yeah. I think that we will present to anybody who would like us to or is interested in it. Sometimes it's hard to present to PTAs, but if they're willing to let us come in, like, for example, with Linwood Monroe, we're just going to include stuff in their newsletter that's going out. But I think sometimes it's better to do presentations because then people can ask questions and actually get their questions answered right then and there. So, yes, we have enough scope to be able to accommodate presentations.
We can add them. I will say that most of this is geared towards providing project information to people that are potentially impacted by projects, not as much focused on sort of marketing or talking about the program overall to other groups. That doesn't mean we shouldn't. I'm just saying that was kind of when I built the scope, I was thinking about the kind of the community engagement piece and how do I make sure that the people that could end up having their lives be disrupted in some way by this program or could potentially be benefiting directly from the program, how will they know what we're doing in a timely fashion? That's kind of what we built it around. It's a bit of a hole, to be honest, in my planning right now is where we also should be just to sell it, just to sell the program overall, that this is a step that was taken, it's something that we're proud of. And I think that gets into not only sharing it at the community groups, but at some point we probably need to start, if we're successful, which I plan on being, we present this, at conferences, we submit it for award. I mean, and so I think there's a couple different layers, but particularly if you think there are community groups, like Rotary is a really good example of a place we should just go, because there's going to be a set of folks that are impacted, could benefit for the program, but we've missed in other outreach forums that we should go to. So if there are other ones that fall in that category, please let us know, and we can add ourselves to the docket and go talk to them.
And they're also, they're community leaders at Rotary or PTA, and they get out and they tell others. So when someone's complaining, do you see what the city's doing to my street? And they can say, here's what they're doing, and here's why it's important, and the wonderful things that are going to occur from it. I also was wondering, with respect to any of the walking tours or anything on the website, we will have some mock-ups where someone can look at it and say, now I truly can envision it because now I see what it's going to look like, or is it not that kind of advanced diagramming at the time of the...
I think this is more of a me thing. So Jessica would say absolutely as much detail as we can give them, the more productive it's going to be. So that is why they're not scheduled yet. So, but yeah, for the home one, if I walk out there and I don't have anything more than I've just talked about in the meeting, they're not going to be a happy group. Okay. So, but what we are really talking, I don't know how much I need a mock-up versus I've got kind of these level maps that I have for the other projects where sidewalks on this side of the street. We're looking at this side of the street. These are the trees we have here. These are our options to work around it. But we actually have to have an engineer or a project manager as a part of that group, not just Jessica, so that we can actually get into the details. So it'll vary a little bit, but...
I guess what I was thinking, and it may be that it's not possible, but like if you were going to paint your house and you can go to Sherwin-Williams' website and you hit some buttons and it shows the new room with the new color, and is there a way to visually see what a sidewalk will look like on this street as a mock-up? I'm not talking about a map necessarily. I'm talking about I can look at that picture and say, wow, this will be a great street when it's finished. A visual rendering. Okay, yeah. Maybe not a mock-up is not the word, but...
Yeah, visuals are... Those get spendy, but not too spendy in this way, actually. There's probably a way to do it, and I will think on this a little bit and figure out what we can do to not only talk about the impacts, but show the benefit. I think that's what you're getting at, is how are you showing people what's coming?
Here's what's coming, and it's going to be great.
Be excited
Hold
about
on.
It. Yeah.
Have patience.
And we will have... some of these things are moving at a pace while I'll actually have some new sidewalk to take actual pictures of and show you not only... This is what's in somebody's neighborhood. Look, it looks nice. So, but I think we could look at both. How can we show you what it can be? I think that's possible. So,
thanks.
Anything else? Okay. So, performance measures. I touched on this a little bit. We are planning to provide a real-time tracker on the project website, so that way members of the public can kind of follow along with us where we're at with metrics for this project. And so we have developed a list of what we think are good performance measures, but we wanted to see if there's anything else that you think that we should be tracking for the public. So we're going to show the number of miles of sidewalk and paths added, the percentage of schools with safe routes to schools, number of trees preserved and planted, number of public engagement opportunities, and percent of phase 1 projects completed.
Can I
Go ahead.
make a suggestion?
Sure.
On schools?
Yeah.
All the other numbers are so big, and schools are so small. And I think that we can actually be more impactful by talking about school children.
That's what I was thinking.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Number of students and
Yeah.
as
Well, and I guess I don't understand how what qualifies as a school with safe routes to schools? I mean, because if we're doing, I mean, supposedly it's supposed to be everything within a mile or whatever, so the buses don't, because that's what the buses don't do. That's a tall order. I don't think that's really, so how are we measuring whether a school has safe, at what point is enough sidewalk
when does it
become
qualify?
Is it actually safe routes, and when is it?
I'm
still in progress?
Yeah, I've struggled with this one. I need a schools measure, and I don't know the right one. So we settled on this percentage of, can I, within a mile of the school that you've had improvements made. It doesn't mean every route to your school
Right.
is now safe.
Right.
But it means that we've done a project within that mile area that helps you build out your safe routes to schools network to that location, is how I was thinking of it. I'm open to suggestions on how to do it better. I like the idea of students, student populations, kind of the same thing that now there's been an investment made that could serve those students. So I'd like to explore that a little bit and see if I can come up with a more compelling measure. But I need something that's measuring the schools piece, and that's what you're seeing me that's the best I've come up with so far.
And that might be maybe there's some information sharing, gathering that can come from the school's transportation department. They might be able to provide, if you're looking for a clearer window, bus routes will tell you, we'll paint a picture.
Yeah, or maybe, safety improvements within a mile of a school.
Yeah.
Something, yeah. So we'll work on that one.
With respect to the miles of sidewalks, along the same idea that's going to be a relatively small number. I mean, it's going to be slow going, Oh, it's 2. And then in a few weeks, it's 3.
Yeah.
Maybe feet or
linear feet.
Something that's looks a little bit more impressive as we move along. And that blocks. Or yes, yeah. I just think miles is going to be a smaller subset, especially phase 1. Is it 13 miles total in phase 1?
Yeah, you're right. Miles would be small. We can do linear feet. That's actually what I put in our Safe Routes to School grant applications was feet, linear feet. So
I had the same thought this morning when I was going over this. I was like,
And make sure the data point on the trees is the 2 are called out, right? Trees we preserved. And
oh, right.
I don't want to see
Split them out.
300 trees preserved or planted. Right.
Which is which?
Yeah.
I like them together, but I will separate them if you want me to.
Anything else? Okay. So we've got a few things in motion right now. The website is under development. It was actually being updated when I left for this meeting tonight, so even by tomorrow you might see some of the updates being made. But the website, we see this as the resource for anybody in the community that has a question about what's happening with the SAFE program. So it's a resource for you as well as for the community. It's going to have a news area, so there will be timely updates. We're going to have more detailed information about each of the programs or the projects. And so obviously it depends on what stage each project's in. So at some point, like some of the projects right now are just showing like a big fat line on the map, but eventually some of those projects will actually show what side of the street we're planning on adding sidewalks.
And that information will be when you say interactive map, will it be integrated with the map? Because I find it so frustrating when, I think, is it ODOT? Somebody's got one right now, and every single project basically reads the exact same, even though we know that these projects are very, very different because, they're included on our own TSP.
Yeah.
So there'll be, like, as more information gets, that detail will show up.
So it's on Google Maps, and so there's going to be two versions of the maps. So Google Maps only allows for you to really do one big fat line on a map. You can't put it on one side of the street because honestly it just depends on how you're viewing the line on the map and how much you're focused in. But then we're going to have a second set of maps that is just like a static image. It's going to be a designed image that will actually show what side. So if people want to drill down for more information, they can, and they'll be able to see eventually what side of the street, for example, or both sides of the street.
And can you click, if I recall, you can get to that detail from the box. So I've clicked on the line on the Google map, and then I've got another link that's going to take me to the detailed, even though that will say basically just the basic scope, schedule, but time.
Sure.
In the box, you'll be able to get from the box to the detail relatively easily.
That's what's, because it's going, AD, going to the, and finding the right color triangle.
We don't want
and
to lose people. Yeah. We want people, so again, I think it's like a layer of information. Some people just want to find out, is it happening on my street? I heard that something's happening, and so they can go to the Google map and decide whether or not it's going to impact them.
Right.
But then the next layer is, okay, it is on my street. What does this mean for me and my neighbors?
And so the ones that are still out from planning, that are just the bold line, will it give them a date to come back, or sort of a timeline of when to expect more detail to be available?
This image is really hard to make out, but currently we have the projects listed by which year they're going to be under construction, so that I think will help because there is a year associated with it. And I think that this is one of those things where, as we're out talking with more people, we're going to find out how people want to receive the information. So if people want more specific, like if they want summer of 2019, we'll do it if we can, but we don't want to put misinformation out there either. We are also, one of the things that we found to be really helpful with Linwood and Monroe is just to have a fact sheet, or an FAQs document, because we're getting a ton of questions related to just that intersection. So we're planning to have FAQs for each of the projects. We're going to have an overview video, as I mentioned before, and then we'll have those performance measures and contact information, which is currently going to be listed as my contact information. Any questions about the website?
Maybe not specifically about the website. I'm just curious, Kelly, do you anticipate at this point now much change in, in ordering, is it possible that a phase 3 might get bumped to 2, or are we at this point, we're
I'm trying not to change it.
Okay.
I mean, I'm resourced out, so I've got, I have project manager designed and target bid award dates for everything on this list. I am, as we're getting further into design and scoping, costs are shifting and challenges are arising, which means some things are gonna have to flip. I don't know what those are right now.
Okay.
I'm hoping it's not a ton of them. But as we, I'm hoping I'm not changing much, but I have kept it at the year level right now, somewhat on purpose.
Okay. And as those flips happen, we're anticipating being able to communicate that really well to people, because I think that it could be really,
why did
if
this
someone's
move up
looking
or
forward
get
to
pushed
something
back?
being completed in 2020, and they should.
Absolutely. That's part, this is us, we're sharing a lot, which makes us accountable for a lot.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you, if it's going to be in this year, that we intend to do it in that year. And if I'm not going to, then I need to explain that. Usually, if that's happened, it's come through some engagement thing, which then is explaining why. So,
and when you're
we'd be informing
talking
that.
years, you're using calendar years, not fiscal years?
This is calendar year. This is calendar year, right? Yeah. Sorry, I get confused because I have another set of things. It's all based on fiscal year. This one's calendar year.
So I've already talked a little bit about Linwood Monroe. We completed the design last week, so we've been working collaboratively with Clackamas County. And this week we started knocking on doors and informing the immediate neighbors about the updates that were going to happen. Everyone that I've had an opportunity to talk with so far is pretty excited about it. They have a lot of concerns about illegal U-turns and people turning around in their driveway. There was a lot of comments about just that there's probably more crashes happening at that intersection than are even being reported. Because, I mean, I found it really interesting to just to hear from the neighbors how many people are actually paying, like they've got cameras watching the intersection to see like what's happening there at all times. So this is a group of people that are very interested in this improvement, and the comments that we're receiving, so far I've received 18 comments about just this intersection. They are fearful that there's going to be an increase in traffic on their neighborhood streets because of diversion of traffic, but we have a traffic analysis that we're able to kind of back it up with the data, and so that's been really helpful. And Dalton has been out with us as well, so he's able to kind of talk about it from the project manager's perspective, from the city's perspective, and I'm able to kind of make sure that everybody's getting their questions met. So we are currently, for the schedule, we're looking for the next fair weather day, which means that it needs to be dry and over 40 degrees. And thanks to climate change, that might actually happen in December. We've actually had some pretty nice sunny days this month, so we're still hoping that it will happen in December, but we're telling the public that it should happen by early January. We have already done a presentation with the Linwood Neighborhood Association. We have included an article about it in the December pilot. We've also already contacted Linwood Elementary, and they're going to include it in their newsletter. And we're going to be we're going to actually visit businesses later this week and inform them about it. Just in looking at traffic patterns and delivery patterns, I don't think that the businesses are going to be terribly disrupted by this, but you never know until you get out there and start speaking with people. And we're sending a mailing out to a half-mile radius around the project. And social media. Any questions about Linwood, Monroe?
I'll just say that I followed a chain of comments on nextdoor.com about it, and it was very interesting to watch because there was a lot of grousing, like, what do you mean I'm not going to be able to go through? And then there were other people who were like, you should be on King Road, buddy. And so I'm very optimistic about this, actually. I think it's a good thing. And
I think we try to be really, go ahead, I'm just really honest about that there will be, it's a diverter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's inherent to the name. There will be diversion of trips. There will be changes in traffic patterns. We will measure that. We'll come back, in a few months, and we'll take a look and see how this is operating. It gives us actually a really great chance to see how this operates before we do the final install. The permanent version of this is more substantial. It's got a concrete median. It's got a hawk signal. This is the interim improvement. So, yes, there will be. I try to be really honest and upfront with people that there will be changes in traffic patterns, and we're making these changes because we have an unsafe situation that we need to resolve, and this is the best method that we've identified to be able to solve for two of the primary, these turning movements are really driving a lot of the issues that we have here. So, but that's why we're out talking to people, because we don't want it to be a surprise to anybody.
I've got a question about, as you're measuring progress, and maybe also, and maybe this isn't something that you're necessarily putting on the website, but just internally tracking, how we're doing with our outreach, and trying to capture, the number of negative comments or positive comments, or somehow, measuring, how we're doing on getting the word out, and also, and maybe, and also questions, not just whether questions are answered, but, Was the question sort of founded in misinformation?
Yeah.
I mean, just will you be measuring that through this? Because I think at the end of this, we will have learned a ton.
Yeah.
And you're going to learn a lot more than we're going to learn, but it would be good to have that analysis at the end, like what, how did we do?
I think we didn't have it on the high level one, but we have some metrics of our own in terms of timeliness. I mean, we can measure how fast and how complete we are in our responses. I don't have anything that I'm tracking. You probably do in your system that's pros and negatives and positives. I didn't ask for that in the scope.
Yeah.
So
We're not, but I think it's an interesting thought. And I think that it would be easy enough to see, look at the number of maybe negative comments at the start of the project versus maybe in year 2 and see if that number has dipped. Because if it's lower, then it means that we're communicating appropriately. So I think that that's a good thing for us to try to track.
I think so let's see. I think we'll have your points will take in that we'll have a lot of information that will serve us well if we track it right from the beginning.
Right.
So how do we do that? And I can follow up more on that. And I will say at this point, the reason why I like how JLA is approaching this is because we're integrating project input in. We're not just sharing it or getting comments. We're saying, hey, in some cases you've flagged an issue. I had someone say, I want to know, I'm a firefighter. I live right here. I want to make sure, that I know how this is going to happen. And that had been considered, but not to the extent that it probably should have been. And that person helped us. So I guess right now it's almost like this real time, you're bringing value to the project, and we try to communicate that back because we do have some flexibility in a lot of different areas. But overall, it'd be great at the end to see how successful were we. Did we move people from kind of a negative point of view to a positive point of view? So.
Yeah.
Back to the diverter. Do you expect that to slow the traffic on Linwood in any way?
I do, and I guess this is where I give my I'm not a traffic engineer disclaimer.
You just play one.
But I'm playing one right now. I am your traffic engineer right now. No, but the visual of the yellow and the striping changes that we're making, that's going to catch people's attention. I actually do anticipate that it's going to cause some slowing right there. What I have told the community when they've asked me, well, what do you think about lowering the speed? We've got not only this project, we have building out the rest of the sidewalks, which again, I think is going to give more of a visual cue to slow down. The county has a project going the other direction to add sidewalks that's going to help with that. I'd like to get some of these pieces in place. And then if we're still looking at people traveling way too fast through the corridor, then we do a speed study and see if we need to make some further changes to slow people down. But I think the visual cues are going to slow people down as well.
Could we get, I know it's short notice at this point since it's happening any day.
Trying.
But it would be great to have sort of before and after speeds. We've got those signs that we can put up that record speeds.
We do have, I think the traffic work we've done should give us the before on the speeds. So I'll check with Dalton, but I think we probably would just be looking at the speeds after.
After, okay.
Mm-hmm. And seeing what that looks like.
Would be interesting.
Yeah. But we expect that it would. But I also know, so when we talk about crashes at this location, you've got speed, impaired drivers, and these turning movements. That's mostly what's causing it. I'm dealing with the turning movements. I may be slowing people down a little bit. I hope I'm slowing people down a little bit. But if we need to go further with the speed reduction, then we can look at other options.
Anything else on Linwood, Monroe? And then finally, there's the Selwood project, and we have a contractor in place, and Q1 is when we're thinking about starting construction, and so we are getting encouragement letters out as soon as even late this week, maybe early next week. So there are 6 properties that have encroachments in the right-of-way that will need to be moved in order for us to make our improvements. And then as soon as those letters are sent, within a couple of days, we will follow up with some, visiting their residents. But the letter will include my contact information, so people can also call me too. And it will include an opportunity for people to actually set an appointment up with me so I can visit them at a time that's convenient for them. But we don't, there's only really 2 properties that I think might get a little hairy. And it's more just like an RV parked in the right-of-way, and we've already had a conversation with the property owner, and they're not pleased about moving it. But I think that there's actually 30 properties in that project area that have encroachments in the right-of-way, but that don't necessarily actually need to be addressed as a part of these safe improvements. So they might eventually have to go through the permitting process, but we are just going to focus on those 6 properties for now.
The letters themselves, do they say encroachments in the right-of-way, or do they say you're in public property? I think that right-of-way, we know what it means. It means that it's city property, but
we
it's
use
public
plain
property.
language. Yeah, we do. We define what we mean by encroachment, because we want to make sure that people know what it is, know what the term means, and understand, what right-of-way means, but we define it as well, so that way people can understand, what it, because for a lot of them, it feels like their property, even though it's public, it's public. So, I've got a lot of experience working with folks that have encroachments in the right-of-way, and I think that most people are like, didn't realize, and so there's a little bit of hand-holding and relationship building that has to happen with these conversations.
And you didn't realize and also inherited the encroachment. A lot of people didn't build it. They bought a property that...
Right.
Yeah.
How many, do you remember offhand how many blocks there are to the Selwood project?
No, but I got a map. You want me to pull it up and show you?
Yeah, I just was curious if only 6 encroachments need to be removed. That sounds pretty good, actually.
That was a lot of work to
Yeah,
to get it down to 6.
Yeah.
We are trying to, get what we need done with it is impacting, but it's a fairly substantial project. And so to get it to 6 was quite an accomplishment.
When I remember you showed us on, maybe when the contract was let or whatever, that there were only 3, you got down to 3 trees to be removed, which I thought was pretty.
The Japanese maple is spared.
Yes. Well, I think, is that your last slide?
Yes, it is. You wanna?
Unless you guys have more for Jessica, I'll send her back and I'll just talk a little bit more about Selwood and Ardenwald. Then you can go. Does that sound good?
No, looks
Okay.
comprehensive, and that's being very important in this project.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for your
Thank you very
time.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Food's here.
So what?
Oh. The food is here if we want to take our dinner break.
Okay, well,
Kelly,
Kelly, how long you've got?
Super fast.
Yeah. So does anybody know if they're rebuilding the tennis courts at Rao? Are they going to behind the school or something like that?
I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't remember. Denny will be here tonight and he'll know.
I thought they were, do they look like they're demolishing them?
They are a parking lot. What used to be tennis courts is now a parking lot.
Really?
Yep.
Wow.
I'm no expert at all, total disclaimer. I think that's just temporary until they finish the backside. They're doing work on the backside of the building, aren't they?
Yeah, I think the high school tennis courts are going to Rao.
They
as
expanded
well.
the tennis courts and they expand the footprint, but I think it's just a temporary measure.
Okay.
I defer to Denny. But.
I don't know. I've just
Nice of them.
ridden past it 100 times.
Okay, so I'm going to flip-flop a little bit. Selwood, this is, and I'll go back to the map in a minute and tell you more, but it's new sidewalk and crossings on Southeast Selwood Street, mostly on the south side of the street, and then we're doing sidewalk repair and replacement on 30th and Madison. We have Tipani, I think that's how you say it, Inc. was awarded the construction contract, so thank you all for approving that about a month ago. According to that contract, this has to be done. The drop dead date is August 23rd, so before school starts next year. Obviously, we're hoping it gets started earlier than that. We're working to set up the pre-construction meeting with them right now that will finalize schedule. So after I get that pre-construction meeting done and a more firm schedule, I'll come back and give you more detail. But this is the map, Councilor Beatty, that you were talking about. And it's a little hard to see, but really like I said, most of the new stuff, the new sidewalk and then the encroachment that we're dealing with are on Sellwood itself from the park down to 30th. And we have all of the intersections that you're seeing do have crosswalks. Some of them have all 4, some of them only have 2, the north and the south, due to some crossing limitations, but most of them have, I'd say it's about half and half. I'd say half of them have all 4 sections striped and some of them have 2. So that's Sellwood. Do y'all have any questions?
So you're saying the 30th block is just repair? It's an existing sidewalk there?
Yeah, I want to get up and show you, but he's going to make me get that microphone. And I don't have it with me. So yes, the 30th is replacing substandard, not wide enough, not good sidewalk. Sellwood, this one is new.
Right.
There's a little bit of replacement, a teeny segment, but it's mostly new.
Okay.
Yeah, on the south side.
And the, okay.
Yeah. Anything else on that one? Okay. Let me go to, all right, here's Ardenwald. Ardenwald's a lot smaller. So that one, we're replacing the walking path, so that does exist. We're rebuilding that from Wake and Olson. Right there. And then you've got a new sidewalk. And I think that's on Wake Street and rounding the corner. And the sidewalk is coming in on the school side, which is west.
Do we have any sort of inventory of similar publicly owned itty-bitty alleyways throughout the city? I mean,
itty-bitty, like where I could put more paths.
Where can we put more paths like that? Because we have so many of these, because of the way we developed, I mean, these like long stretches all over the city where you have to walk a mile out of your way to get to a place that is maybe just 2 blocks away.
I bet we have something, but I don't know. I'd have to ask Denny, but there may be something that we've either done in the TSP. It may have been gathered and I just don't have it. I bet we do.
Okay.
See that map again?
Yeah.
So that one does not continue, the path doesn't continue beyond Olson, it ends at Olson?
It stops there.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so a little bit more, and then I'll let you go eat. So this one went to D&D Concrete and Utilities. It's awarded as well. They are going to start working March 1st. The path is set to be done over spring break, and that project has to be done according to the contract by May 31. So these are these 2. The next contract I think you're going to see is the Linwood design contract.
So I know Chuck was thinking about an alternative material on that path. Did it land on that, or did it land on concrete?
I don't know. I don't know. I'll find out. I actually didn't read it to that detail before I walked in here tonight, and I bet I knew a week ago and forgot. So, but I can find out and write you all back and let you know. I think I will just tell you I'm struggling right now with permeable concrete. Apparently it's slippery and mossy and people are having issues with it. So I just need to see if it was asphalt. If it's asphalt, then I feel pretty hopeful. If it's, if we went concrete, yeah, I'll just have to go check.
Yeah, I think he was toying with testing out that rubber stuff, the ground tire thing on that pathway to see if it worked. But
when I talked to him, it had been priced out, but I don't know which version had been priced out. We'd have to look back.
Is that like that stuff they use in some of the parks on
Playgrounds?
On the
Yeah,
kids'
if you're-
play area?
Or,
Yeah,
or if it's around trees, because
Right.
apparently it
has
lets
some
enough
give to
water
it, and
through.
it's
and
pervious, yeah.
is able to bend a little bit if the tree root grows
Right,
and things like
yeah.
that.
I can actually check while you're eating,
Okay,
and I'll just pull up the contract and see what's in there.
cool. I was just
So.
curious.
Yeah.
And the, no encroachments here?
Not here.
Nope.
Not that I know of. This one's pretty
Well, I
small.
mean, the path is obviously, there should be encroachments. With
Yeah,
the little-
and since we're on the school side
Yeah.
with the work, not that I'm aware of, but yeah.
Cool.
If that's it, I'll release you to
Exciting.
Yeah, very exciting.
Thank you very much.
go. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly.
All right. Well, then we are going to take a short break, 15 minutes or so, and be back for the last half of our study session.
must be doing construction where their parking lot is in the back. And so
They did a temporary one that they took out, or,
in the back.
yeah.
Yeah. So that will be tennis courts again.
It's going to be,
Tennis courts in the front, yeah.
they're coming back, because right now they're a parking lot.
Yeah.
They're striped and everything.
It's going to be tennis court.
Ah, good.
What are they use for parking lot?
You're live.
Okay. So next thing is the comprehensive plan, Block 2 policies, a discussion. This will be presented by our planning director, Danny Egner, and our senior planner, David Levitan.
And I'm just going to immediately hand it to David.
Oh, how convenient. It's good to be king. But anyway, thank you, Mayor, councilors. We are here tonight, as the mayor mentioned, to discuss the Block 2 goals and policies for the comprehensive plan update. As a reminder, the comp plan is broken up into 3 blocks of work. The City Council adopted a resolution back in August pinning down the goal and policy language for the Block 1 topic areas. And so for about the past 4 months, we've been working on the current set of goals and policies for the 4 topic areas, which include Parks and Recreation, the Willamette Greenway, Natural Hazards, and Climate Change and Energy. I think it's been, building upon what we did back in Block 1. It's been a really good process. We've gotten a lot of good public engagement. We had a town hall back in October that was accompanied by a online open house. We got a lot of really good feedback that then the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, or the CPAC, has used to help synthesize goal and policy language. We've also checked in periodically with the Planning Commission. We went before the Parks and Recreation Board last month to get their thoughts specifically on the Parks and Recreation and Willamette Greenway sections. We've met with our technical advisory group, which consists primarily of department heads, including the Public Works Director, the Community Development Director, the Assistant City Manager, to kind of get their thoughts, to get a lot of different perspectives on the policy language, especially as they relate to, on the implementation side, kind of what the expectations or kind of what this type of goal and policy language would mean as far as program development and budgeting, as far as their programs that they're responsible for. So we feel like we've done a pretty good job of engaging a lot of different stakeholders that, were vital to engage in the development of these goals and policies. So before you tonight, if you look at your packet, we've included the draft goals and policies. They're included as both Attachment 4 and Attachment 5. Attachment 5 is the clean version of the proposed language that we have so far. Attachment 4 is the track changes version that reflects changes made since they were presented to the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee and the Planning Commission and PARB within the CPAC meeting was last Monday, and the Planning Commission and PARB met the week before. So, staff has worked diligently to try to incorporate these comments and turn them around. And we wanted to make sure to show the changes that have been made to reflect those comments. For Mayor Gamba and for Council President Beatty, having looked at the previous iteration more closely, we hope that the changes are reflective of what they heard at the CPAC, and for anyone that reviewed the Planning Commission meeting, we hope that we've incorporated a lot of what they had to say as well, because they had some really great comments. So with that, we were just wanting to walk through the 4 sections tonight, just to see if you had any major issues or major additions or edits that you'd like to make. Danny, do you have any?
Yeah, well, we were hoping to have you pin down those policies in January, if you can, if you agree with them at that point. And again, what we did last time was adopt them by resolution, and they will come back in a full package when the comprehensive plan is adopted. So that's when the formal hearings would occur in the fall.
Based on your feedback tonight, we are going to have a 5th and final meeting with the CPAC on January 7th, just to kind of show them what the any edits that have been made since this meeting. We'll also be meeting with North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District next Monday, I believe. I believe Denny just set up that meeting. We've kind of had some...
One cancel.
Yeah, we've had to cancel a couple of times. And
the positive thing there is they have been at a couple of meetings where it was discussed. I think Catherine was at the, Catherine Krager was at the PARB meeting.
She was at the PARB meeting.
And she did come to our open house. So they've had some opportunities for input.
And so, yeah, the plan would be then to basically show the kind of the final proposed language at that January 7th CPAC meeting, and then come back the following week to have them pinned down by resolution by the council, and then move on to Block 3, and then the kind of concurrent housing track, which will be the focus of our meeting next week. So if we wanted to just kind of start with Parks and Recreation, just because that's the in the order that that the policies are included in attachments 4 and 5.
Are we going through the public engagement report, the summary report at all? Or, because I did have one question.
Yeah, we can.
On SS17, so page 8, neighborhood distribution, I thought that chart did a really good job of sort of maybe gut checking a little bit about, where respondents were coming from, just, neighborhood. You could see that, Ardenwald, my neighborhood, percentage of survey respondents were 24% of the respondents. Ardenwald makes up 19% of the city. But then where we don't do that, and I thought maybe it's, almost, well, it's just as important. We don't do it in the very next page on income. I thought that was maybe a missed opportunity. Can we somehow also compare, for example, the one that really jumps out to me is the number of respondents who make over $150,000 a year. 13% of the people who are responding, in either open house or survey. If I remember correctly from our H&A, maybe 2% of Milwaukee residents make that much money. So, I just think I thought it was, a good feature that you used in the, neighborhood, and I wish I, would have seen that reflected in the next two charts as well, because I think, when we're evaluating these responses, I think we always need to kind of keep in mind that, we know we're not touching everybody, because I know, obviously that, 300 people, in a city of 20,000, but also just sort of comparing. I just thought that was a really good comparison, and I'd like to see more of that, I guess.
Yeah, that's great
possible.
Feedback, and yeah, I think that is obviously an important metric as far as seeing how representative of sample. Obviously, you can't get super representative at that sample size, but as much as we can.
Yeah,
And it's just an online open house. The people that are responding are the people that feel like responding. It's
no, and there are points of encouragement. The folks that were, the number of people who responded to the, were viewing the Spanish, version of, that's great. And
we had a lot of people respond for an online open house like that.
Yeah.
So that was really fortunate, we thought. But again, no control over how you reach people, and we've got a great list of contacts electronically that we send out to, and so we think we get a really good response rate from those folks, but we don't really know either.
Right.
We don't know who's responding. It's all anonymous.
Yeah, and it's varied. It's ebbed and flowed depending on the subject matter. There were people that were at the Housing Forum last week that I didn't know, and I've gotten to know. We definitely have a core group of people that are involved with the vision and the comp plan, but there were definitely new people that obviously have an interest in housing, so it's going to, and I looked through the sign-in sheet, and it was, different neighborhoods, people affiliated with different churches throughout the city that obviously have very much an attachment to that issue.
Now, hopefully, we have their names and email addresses so we can invite them to
participate
the rest of the events. Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah, so if we wanted to kind of start with Parks and Recreation, and I don't think we need to walk through every single policy, but if there are policies that you would like to touch on and have questions about or want to propose revised language, that would be great, and we can take it from there.
I do have a question about the overarching chapter goal, and I'm looking at the strike version, so SS 50. I'm curious about what the intent was. What does the sentence, "The city will preserve the opportunity for future interim public recreational use of vacant private lands"? What is that requiring of the city? I'm not.
I don't know that it's requiring anything. The intention on that is around parking lots. So if all the predictions come true and parking lots become a thing of the past, there's an opportunity there, right, to create more parkland, to create more natural areas, to create more
Housing.
But I mean, this is Parks and Recreation
Sure,
section,
but
so.
I guess my question is, this says the city will preserve the opportunity for future interim public recreational use on vacant private lots.
It doesn't
SS
say,
50.
It doesn't say all.
Yeah, it just says preserve the opportunity. It doesn't say will make this use.
Yeah.
No,
Well, I guess
no.
the wording is I'm just curious. I'm not, it's not telling me what we're going to do. It's not telling me what preserve.
And it says shall.
It says will.
Didn't you say it says
No, it
shall?
says will.
Oh, will.
Which I read as shall, which I read as
Well,
must.
exactly.
So that's I read it as
different.
must, and so
You could
that
get a
is.
few more shells in there. I mean, just as a parting gift to Shane.
Yeah.
I did make sure the ones I touched had will.
I noticed that I actually noticed that it had been done.
I think we probably got shalls in block 1 that we'll have to
Live with.
extract.
So that's the intention. It's and it's not all. It doesn't say all the parking or all the vacant lots. It just says that should be something that the city is thinking about, engaged in, is to not just let those sit fallow, to not.
And I'm great with that. I guess maybe my concern is the word will, because I read that as must.
What page are you on again?
SS 50.
So it's just the overarching chapter goal, which in the track changes version is SS 50 and in the clean version is SS 63.
As you bring this up about that, I wonder if that particular statement might be better pulled out of the overarching goal and put in one of the policies
Into a
somewhere.
policy and maybe clarify a little
Yeah.
bit more. I think that's maybe what I'm hoping
Yeah.
to do.
I'm not sure exactly where right off the top of my head, but I think it might make sense to drop it down.
And I'm going to bring this up later with another item, but I wonder if in some of these it wouldn't hurt to be more explicit about the why. Right? When we put a policy in, somebody reading it 15 years from now goes, why were they thinking this? And I think sometimes the why very often causes people to look at it differently and to think about it differently.
Are there ones in particular that you think?
Well, there was
need that
one.
clarification?
There's one later in the climate and energy one that when it comes up, I'll bring it up, because I thought somebody made a point that I thought was really, even for me, it was kind of an aha. There was a, oh wow, yeah, that really does make a difference, and the policy itself doesn't do that, but the slightly expanded version of why you would want to do this.
Formatting wise, I mean, there's a lot of different ways you might be able to get at that too. It could be like a footnote to explain something. I mean, you can do it in a way that it's not actually part of the policy, but it just sheds a little light on it. Or you could do some other, it might be a statement in the background section. So you've got that explanation in the background before you get into the policies. I mean, there may be a couple different ways to get at the why.
Yes, the city, I mean, definitely some of the more recent comp plans that I've looked at, and you'll have call-out boxes in the margins and things like that just, you'll highlight a policy and then there'll be something, and then it can go more into the why, like, why this particular type of policy language is important or why this topic is important. But, and when we get to that one, we'd be happy to discuss it further.
But I think this is another good example. I think it's not necessarily clear why, or even specifically what we're talking about. It's kind of vague, and a lot of times when there's something vague in a document like this, which is inherently mind-numbing anyway, people tend to just skip it, kind of gloss over it, they miss it, because they don't really, there's nothing that connects in their brain.
Well, and the document pulls stuff from all over, different people's comments, and maybe we didn't quite get what they initially meant, and it morphed a little bit. I'm sorry to jump in, Lisa.
No, I just was going to say, I mean, maybe if really the motivator is parking lots, maybe we should say parking lots instead of vacant private lands. I actually think private parking lots are going to take care of themselves. They're going to go back on the market, and they're going to get redeveloped. The parking lots that are most likely to be sitting unused are probably like schools and public institutions and things like that maybe aren't going to be as quick to redevelop. I think the private, the people out on International Way, if they don't need their parking lots, they're going to be building something else.
They also have to pay for stormwater on the impervious surface. So what we're finding is that people do want to turn those over so they don't have to pay that monthly fee.
And I mean, I guess I just want to make sure that, we're not being so restrictive, because I don't necessarily think that, all of the parking lots that are going to go away should become parklands. I think that, it would be way more appropriate for, on International Way if someone needs to build another, I mean, that's a job hub for us. So it would make more sense for that to be converted to whatever that next industry is, and I guess so then, my concern isn't with that intent at all. I think, of course, it'd be wonderful if some of these parking lots turned to parks, but I also think some of them might more appropriately be turned into housing, or some other use. And so I just, the restrictive nature of that sentence was sort of bothering me, and I just wonder if the policy better describes it, then I would rather take it out and leave it to the policy to explain.
Right. Well, so to your point on International Way, though, and this also goes to the North Milwaukee Innovation Area, we have creeks running through those industrial areas, and it would be really appropriate to be able to take parts of parking lots and create a riparian buffer around those creeks.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think, I guess, my point is there should be flexibility around the use of
and I don't, that
those types
to me,
of.
It doesn't say all parking lots. It doesn't say.
It doesn't say parking lots.
But it doesn't say parking lots at all.
It
says will, and that's the part.
No, I understand what your concern
about.
is on the will. I thought it was vague enough that even vacant land doesn't even. A parking lot's not a vacant land.
Well, true.
No.
So I don't even think a parking lot comes under that.
Right.
So maybe
if that's what you're looking for.
That needs.
Yeah, I mean, it is a pretty long sentence. Some people may not realize that the will applies to the sixth segment of that sentence.
Policy 4.2.6 actually addresses the parking lot question, so it's specific to converting.
426, you said?
4.2.6.
SS 52. Yep.
4.2.6, explore conversion.
So I think, my recollection of this, it was more about vacant parcels and the opportunity for vacant parcels to provide a recreational opportunity for folks when they're not being developed, so just those leftover pieces provide some open space opportunities. And how you really make that happen is a tougher nut to crack, I think.
Yeah.
It's private property, but let's let it be a interim,
Dog park.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, actually, yeah. I mean, I think there are properties that people use like that. And actually, now that I think about it, I wonder why we never explored trying to use McFarland as a dog park. But anyway.
It does seem to be used that way.
It is used.
Whether or not I technically did it.
Yeah, since we have the other section, I don't know that we even need that. I mean, unless we are talking about
other than
non-parking lots.
Other than the open land that provides a.
I guess it's just a way of drawing attention, because vacant lots tend to be these invisible things that we don't, unless we happen to live next door to it or down the street from it and go, God, it would be great if that had a swing set on it. Otherwise, it's a vacant.
In 5 years, are we going to have any vacant lots? I'm serious.
Well,
I don't think we are.
So the little spots, like for example, through your neighborhood, there's all those little triangles that
Our railroad
the
property.
railroad has, that's vacant property, and perhaps a conversation, I mean, this is totally pie in the sky, but perhaps a conversation with the railroads, would they be like, yeah, we don't need that.
Well, let's put the railroads aside. I don't think the railroads would say that, because the neighborhoods tried to have that conversation, but they might agree to an easement to use it for a dog park or something. That is something the neighborhood has wanted to do. But those aren't really, well, I guess they're vacant land. I'm thinking of undeveloped
parcels.
Undeveloped parcels that are
Yeah, we're probably not going to.
potential development. We're not going to have, yeah.
And actually, the policy 4.43 actually carries out that goal. So it says, good thing I'm looking back at these. Mary actually is the author of the Parks and Rec policies, so we should have her up here, because her memory would be better than both David's and mine.
So just to get some consensus around my concern, could we maybe just, I mean, if we either take it out or just change it to, some other more flexible word like encourage or,
We really don't need it in the overarching goal.
And that's fine with me.
It can, so the question, I think, is, are you okay with 4.43 as encourage the use of these?
Sorry, say that again?
4.43.
4.4.3.
4.4.3, I'm sorry.
No, see, that's yeah, I mean, that actually is much better. It's encourage the interim, and if that's what the sentence above had said, then I wouldn't have this concern.
Okay, yeah. So the overarching goal is just trying to capture all these ideas in one big statement, and it's maybe a little too much. So easy to drop that.
Thank you.
Had there been a final determination yet on whether to just say like parks districts or call out NCPRD and that, or are you looking for that also this evening?
Yeah, there hasn't. It was suggested, I think it had been suggested that it be a generic term, and then back at the committee meeting, I think it was Councilor Beatty said that we probably should call these agencies out as the agencies that provide that service.
So you do like the use of proper names throughout?
I can understand that, but what if the
In this
district
context,
changes?
Goes away.
Yeah, the district, if
Well, then you say,
So that's why just saying parks district.
And the same with I thought that the comment that, NCPRD did not exist in our last comprehensive plan, so it's a very good point that it may not exist, and we're already seeing trouble with Happy Valley. So I think that's a really good, valid point. If this thing is going to live for 30 years, I don't like the name of proper names.
Well, it shouldn't live for 30 years.
Well,
and I guess it seems odd to me. It seems sort of ostrich in the head in the sand and not
I
recognize
don't know,
who
forthwith, I think it should.
your partners are at the time you're enacting this.
Was
I mean, we name Wes. Are we also going to not name Wes?
I
Are we
actually
also-
was thinking that we remove proper names throughout. I thought that.
Well, that's my thought on it, because, I mean, look at even like two special districts that changed their name recently, you know, because they became one, and so the name of both of them changed, and so those kinds of things happen, whether there's a new district, or we aren't in one, or they just change in some way or another.
Take
So-
on service ourselves.
So make the intent clear, but not necessarily label it to a specific entity.
Or we could do both. You could do, you know, Parks and Rec service provider, parentheses, you know, and put a date on it or something.
Currently, NCPRD. Well, I mean, I guess I guess the important point is what words you're going to use in the repeat places, right?
Yeah.
And if, you know, the nice acronym NCPRD is just, to me, you know, maybe easier to read than Parks and Recreation Provider everywhere through the document. But, I mean, I don't feel particularly strongly either way.
Me either.
Yeah.
I see both.
I just think it should be more generic, and I wouldn't be in support of parenthesizing a named entity. Again, why have a named entity in there?
Well, and the council is definitely representative of their constituents, because this basically mirrors the discussion that we had at the CTAC.
Does the current document have named them?
No, because
There was no NCPRD.
There was no NCPRD. There was no WES either, really, was there?
No, it was,
Wes is a new name.
yeah, it was new also. But
I don't
there
even know
are-
if they call it
School
TriMet.
district or?
Or fire district either.
School district.
Well, and there was a point in time when the school
Hasn't
district
in the
was
last 30
two
years.
different
I'm saying just
school
saying
districts
do.
and different names too, so, yeah.
Well,
is it going to make it impossible to write it?
no.
To genericize it?
We can figure something out if you want to go generic. We can do it.
Given the history, I would suspect this may be on the books for a while, so
Another 30 years.
unless we build it into our budget that every 10 years.
We need to add it.
Yeah.
But just the provider
And
names.
budget and timeline.
Well-
Yeah.
Again, hopefully, we're going to be updating the plan more than, you know, once every 30 years, so we can kind of clean some of these
Well, and
things
if
up,
you
too.
de-annex from a district, you have to change your, you generally have comp plan and zoning and other things you have to change. There's generally some documentary changes required if you de-annex from a district. So we would have to address that if we did keep NCPRD in there and it ended up not, you know.
Be curious how they're going to react to that.
Well, we're doing it across the
If we
board.
do it across the board, it's not going to be like a.
It's not targeted at them,
Yeah, I
it's
know,
just.
but
And you don't even have to leave a district. I mean, a district name can change.
Sure.
You know, I mean.
Yeah, like I said,
Yeah.
look at the water and sewer districts that just changed.
Yeah, and that wouldn't trigger any kind of a required update or
Yeah.
anything.
We just might make it plural, Parks and Rec service providers. I mean, it might make sense. We provide some of that ourselves, programming.
Yeah,
We
that works.
do, so.
Anything else on Parks and Recreation?
Maybe. Oh, yes, I do have a concern. 447, so study session, page 53. The word modest is subjective, and so a modest density bonus may be allowed for including larger proportions of land, and I would just remove modest, because it's then further.
I would say proportional.
I would just say a density bonus may, because it's the word may is saying that it's not required, and it leaves for some flexibility on whether that's a proportional thing or.
But then it's, looking at it from the developer's standpoint, you don't know, right? You don't know that you are going to get that density bonus, so that's going to make you nervous.
Well, but none of this is going to happen until we
Do the code.
do the code.
Yeah.
Right.
So whether we say modest or not, it doesn't, I mean, what the developer's going to look at is the code, when we have the code.
Yeah, and
that's where
that
we
goes
figure
to,
out
yeah, and that
how
goes.
modest or how
Right,
proportional.
exactly. And we may come up with something that doesn't fit with whoever suggested the word modest, that doesn't comport with what they were thinking is modest, or.
It can mean a lot of different things
Could
to
mean
a lot
it
of different
does,
people.
absolutely.
Right, I
mean
totally,
different
I
things to
totally
different
agree
people.
that modest is not the right word.
I don't see a reason to define it at this point. That's something for the code work that comes
Right.
after.
Okay.
Okay, are we moving on to
One
Willamette
thing I
Greenway
might
then?
point out is in 4.4.2, there's reference to an appendix, which was part of the original language. If you look back at the strikeout version, there's a specific listing of the different types of parks, and we chose to pull that out of the policies and actually make it part of the background, or in this case, an appendix. So it wasn't, it didn't need to be policy. It's more, there were more of definitions about the different types of parks that we find in the city.
And do I recall correctly that these definitions are kind of an amalgam of what we had and what NCPRD had?
Yes.
Okay.
You ready for the Willamette Greenway?
Great. And yeah, Denny was the primary author on this, so I'll let him kind of introduce it.
One of the key aspects of the policy changes here is to adopt a Willamette Greenway compatibility review boundary, which is different than what we currently do. Today, within the Greenway, any change in use essentially is a conditional use. And often that requires going to the Planning Commission for minor land use approvals, like a garage addition to a house. And what we wanted to do is try to streamline the process to some degree, and simply changing the boundary of the Greenway is not a simple process, since they were adopted statewide. The LCDC adopted the greenways for all the communities in the state. And I think what they tended to do is capture lands that were either in public ownership, but they're or were adjacent to the water. But there's some choices that were made in the Greenway boundary for Milwaukee that we just don't understand. And I might get up on the map in a moment and point at those. But what we understand generally from other communities across the state and the state staff that administers the Greenway boundary is that you can adopt a review boundary that's smaller than your Greenway boundary. So what we are proposing here is a Willamette River Greenway review boundary that is approximately 150 feet from the edge of the water out. And then that would go through the normal conditional use process that we have, and then we could set up sort of two sets of standards. Oh, thank you. So that we have a full-on conditional use review for everything that's a little bit closer, and you could have maybe some clear and objective standards or a type 2 process for the areas that are outside of that. So just trying to streamline that review. The other aspect that is in the current plan that was never carried out is the idea of a greenway design plan. Our current language refers to a greenway design plan that was never done. But what we have done since then is we've adopted park master plans for much of the greenway. So in one sense, we've adopted a greenway design plan for a good portion of it. We just haven't done it for private lands. So we kept the notion of a greenway design plan in here, that maybe at some point it still might be done, but that these park plans kind of serve that purpose. So let me just point to a couple things on the map here. Okay, the red line's the greenway. It includes all of Kellogg Lake. One of the areas that's just confusing about how this greenway boundary was drawn is down here in Island Station. Here are the railroad tracks, Sparrow right here, 19th. So the greenway boundary comes up, includes some of this public land, includes some houses here, not sure why, drops back down to 19th, comes up here to, Lisa, do you know what street this might be that comes back? It's like
Bob White.
Bob White, then comes back to the railroad tracks. So why is this in, this out, and this in? Doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, and frankly, under that mapping, my house is in, and I've been told my house is not in. So it's very interesting to me, because when we've had some applications on 19th at the northern end of 19th, I was told the Willamette Greenway line was basically 19th, more or less.
We can double check the map again as it was put on here, but I assume it was pulled directly from our GIS. So.
Yeah. Wow.
But we can double check that. But I know there's something, there is a jog like this that definitely happens in the map. The same thing is true in the north there, up sort of beyond the river. I mean, it goes uphill. There might be a view of from that forested area up there in the Waverly Heights area, but it's just an odd boundary in that location. So what we wanted to do is sort of shrink where you have to go through the formal review process or the more intense review process, and provide a little bit more flexibility for some of these areas that were further away. So that just roughly, the purple on this map shows the areas that are 150 feet away. That might be what we call out as our Willamette River review boundary.
From ordinary high water or low water?
It's supposed to be from high water. There might be some other areas that we'd want to keep in the greenway. We could potentially keep all of the floodplain areas, the 100-year floodplain areas in the greenway if we wanted. That might be something we could do. But those are a couple of options.
And why is Elk Rock not?
Well, Elk Rock, again, we're pulling from our current GIS information and what our boundaries are. We would include Elk Rock in a new boundary. So that's a good change that we need to make to this, because Elk Rock just doesn't show up on our data.
The old map.
Yeah. Right, so now that it's in the city, we want to include it.
Blue is ours was on the old map either.
It's in the Willamette Greenway. It just is it's in the county's Willamette Greenway boundary, not in ours. And as was pointed out at the CPAC meeting, there are some weird errors in mapping. Here's the Kellogg Creek coming down. The map doesn't follow the creek exactly. There is protection there, though, because our natural resource mapping covers all of that. So it's not like it's exposed to having redevelopment occur. It just isn't. It just wouldn't happen through a conditional use process. It would have to go through the natural resource review. The other option we have is we could build in a higher level of natural resource review within the Greenway, or we can build in a lower level of natural resource review within the Greenway. And up to us and how we do it. What we have done in the past and what we're proposing we do right now is just use our natural resource review process within the Greenway and not do something special one way or the other. The one exception in here, and it's something I still need to do a little bit of research on, is the way this is written, it accepts the process of removing the dam out of Greenway review. And specifically wrote that in. And I need to double check with Justin and the state to see if we can actually do that by just declaring it out. In a Goal 5 process, a natural resource process, you could do that through the EC analysis, the energy, social, economic, and environment analysis, by declaring that this use is more important than the natural resource use. And here we'd be removing something with the intent of, restoring the natural resource. So I think we can get there, but I'm not 100% certain.
So if we were to just use our natural resource sort of level process, how is that going to get to views?
How does it get reviewed?
Views are something that is only the Willamette.
How does it get to the views?
It wouldn't. The natural resource process isn't going to get to views. We would get to views through the conditional use here. So if you want to deal with, again, the view review through a conditional use process would just occur in what we call out as our compatibility review area. If we want to go further than that and deal with views from other locations, we could map them appropriately. And our interpretation today, and it is just an interpretation, is we would only address view protection from public spaces. We aren't trying to protect private views through Greenway review.
But that's our interpretation. That's not the way the state law
it's
does it.
just
It's vague
not
on
clear in the code. It talks about views to and from the river, but how do you prioritize that on a private view or somebody's house behind someone else's house here? And it just seems like what the intent ought to be is from public spaces, not private views of the water. And we would clarify that in a code update. That's in the Greenway overlay that comes up. So let me see if there's anything else in here that I wanted to point out.
Maybe this is just a big, I don't know, and I'm just curious. Is the reason why Kellogg Creek has so much inclusion in the Willamette Greenway because it is currently a lake, and nothing going up Johnson Creek essentially is included at all? Even, is it?
What we believe is that it is the area that backs up at high water. So when we're at high flow, Kellogg Lake backs up, and that the Johnson Creek is a similar distance back to what would back up. I don't know that's true, but that's what I suspect.
Okay.
And I when I initially was trying to answer that question, why is the boundary the shape it is, at the time the city's comp plan was acknowledged, there was some going back and forth with the state about including Kellogg Lake or not. And I saw a sequence of maps where it was in, it was out, it was in. So, and I didn't go to the next step of going back and trying to dig up all of the correspondence back and forth, which would have been
might be enlightening.
A lot more work, yeah. But I know it was discussed, and it ended up being in, so that was...
Well, and will it be different when there is a...
No dam? It's still back up that far.
Really?
Not changing the geography, sure. It's not like...
Well, if that's
no,
the
but we're
reason.
changing the way water gets through.
But
there's
a dam right now, and it's still going up there. When we take the dam away, it's not going to get up there less, it's going to get up there more.
No, it's going to get up there less. It's going to flow into the river more.
Right.
No, the backup into the lake is not the creek backing up. It is literally the river rising over and
dam.
coming up into the lake area. That's the only reason that we ever get salmon or steelhead or anything up in Kellogg Creek is when the
Overflows.
river overtops the dam.
That makes
And
sense.
so it does that almost every year. And when it does that, that is what it looks like. That's the flood area. So that whole area under in Kronberg Park where we're putting the walkway, the elevated walkway, underneath that it floods. Never seen it?
I've never seen it flood as high as where that walkway's going, no.
Well, not.
I mean, it comes-
Not
Yeah,
all the way up the hill, but when you're standing on the walkway, you're going to look down, and what now you're seeing ferns and stuff. You're going to see at high water, you see water.
Well,
I've been out there
So
when it's been that
it'll
high.
backflow into the,
Yeah, it does currently,
yeah.
and it will do it more so
More
when the
so,
dam's going.
exactly,
because
yeah.
there'll
Because there won't be any
Not
impediments
much
to it.
difference lower.
but there won't be a standing body of water there that it's coming up on top of.
Doesn't matter.
Well, we'll see, I guess.
Tides care
will
about what's
see.
standing there and what's not standing there.
Okay, want to move on?
Yes.
All right, well, I'm done, unless you got
Oh, I
other
had
questions
no,
about
I
the
did. Yeah, I
Greenway.
guess I have questions. The 15.6 to provide, improve, and maintain public, I mean, do we just want to insert physical access and visual access in between public and access? I mean, just to make it consistent with the regulation, that's what that means.
15.6.1?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also wondered on, I don't know if this is 15.6.3, and maybe this is just based, maybe this is a misunderstanding on my part. Do we need to call out Kellogg Creek or Lake if it could potentially change, and I have no idea as to whether it could, but if the Willamette Greenway boundary could change based on actual events, do we want to keep Kellogg Creek in the policy? Or do we only want to refer to the Willamette River because that's the reason for the requirement?
I think we want to keep the creek in there for now, and we changed that from Kellogg Lake to Kellogg Creek.
Yeah, I saw.
Given that it may.
Right. And that's good if we're,
Creek most of the year, but I don't know that it's going to change the Greenway boundary. I don't know that.
and so then my question is, why call out the creek if we're confident that it's not going to change? If the boundary's not going to change.
We're still interested in having visual access to that, to the creek, if not the Kellogg Lake. Maybe I'm misunderstanding, I don't know
Well,
if
I
I'm
mean,
answering your
maybe some
question.
of us are interested in views of, I mean, I guess my concern is more about creating some higher standard for, is it to protect public, back to your point about are we protecting public views or private views? And I don't think, I'm not interested in getting into the business of protecting private views. But I guess, so my concern is that by injecting more area that we're protecting views, are we getting away, are we going beyond what's required of us under the Willamette Greenway state regulations? And I don't know that I want to,
Well,
I guess
think
is what
we're
I'm
supposed to.
suggesting.
The goal talks about protecting views. It's not.
Of the Willamette
statewide
River.
planning goal. Yeah. But
Not of,
But they're defining the Willamette River, the flood boundaries, the ordinary high water, which in Oregon, they define that as the area that floods virtually every year. That's ordinary high water. So that floods virtually every year.
It's kind of up to you guys which way you want to go with it, I think.
so I'm just posing the question to you all. Are we
What's your sub number?
15.6.3?
15.6.
And, yeah, and I guess also
It's
15.6.4 too.
whether to just focus on the river or the river and Kellogg Creek Lake, whatever we want to call it.
We're adding.
Right now, we don't have very much, other than Kronberg Park and the other side of the bridge.
And Dogwood Park.
And Dogwood Park, and the other side of the pedestrian bridge. Those are the only public lands I can think of that are along the creek. But it's not to say that if some of those long, narrow properties out there sought to redevelop or, it became available, we might not want to have another park along the creek. So, I mean, I guess,
Yeah.
I guess I don't see a downside to keeping it in there. I mean, I was definitely the one who brought up striking Lake. Get that lake out of there. But, I don't know. I don't know. Could it help us?
And is public, does that mean city-owned or?
Well, like Rao, yeah, there's public.
Right.
That's a,
Is the church considered public?
no,
No.
no. I mean, they may have a policy of allowing public access on their property, I don't know, but.
I'm not sure if we have any actual street ends or road ends that bump into Kellogg Creek, but, we do to the river. There's some really good locations there that it makes sense to try to protect those road ends that provide those views. I'm not sure how many opportunities there are that are public. But along 19th, there's a couple of road ends, and then there are the concept of building setbacks. So buildings are set back from the property lines, which also creates opportunities for views between those buildings to some degree. And then we've got a couple of opportunities up here that ought to be explored a little bit more, but they might all be private. But here, just as you're driving along through here, on that, there's at 15.6.4, I think it was the notion that that again is talking about Willamette River and Kellogg Creek both, but that one really came about from the open house where there were a group of people that really wanted to plant a lot of trees in Milwaukee Bay Park and weren't concerned about views. So it was, how do you manage the view? How do you be intentional about the views was the intent of that
actually,
policy.
That's a really good, I mean, so I guess part of what, so planting a bunch of trees around Kellogg Creek is exactly what we need to do. But what we're saying we're going to do is the opposite, and so we're not going to, we're not going to lower the temperature of that creek to help protect fish. I have separate concerns about protecting views, and the state requirement for us to do that, because they're at odds with actual, sustainable actions. Protecting a view does absolutely nothing for the health of that creek.
Well, unless you're very intentional about where you do it.
No, direct sunlight on a creek for baby fish is absolutely terrible.
Well,
the temperature of Johnson Creek got up to, what, like 85 degrees or something a couple summers ago?
Well, all I was saying is you could be very intentional about trying to achieve both of those things. You could, it's not where you're providing the wide open view, but you're preserving a view from the specific locations where you want to preserve them. And that requires an inventory and requires some work and some planning. But this would come into play when we are redoing a park plan. We just did Kronberg Park Plan, so it's not as if we're going to do it again.
But we're and that's currently the only land that we control around these areas. And so, and I'm not saying that for Milwaukee Bay Park, that should be the goal to plant trees over the entire thing, because we have other goals, for that park. But, maybe it would be good policy for us to completely cover, an area that's public property with trees to try to enhance that stream as much as possible. That policy doesn't say that to me. It says the opposite. And so I guess my point about Kellogg Creek generally in both of those policies is that we're creating something that's not required of us by state regulation and is at odds with some of our other goals by including Kellogg Creek and Mark, you might be right. I mean, you might be right. It may always and forever be in the Greenway.
Well, see, I pushed back on this initially too, because of exactly what you're saying. And the way it was explained to me was they chose the Greenway boundaries by the ordinary high water mark, the ordinary high water mark. And that's how that ended up in there. So if it's as flexible for us to control or not control our Willamette Greenway areas as it's beginning to sound, then I'm all for what Angel's saying, because I agree that it's obviously the priority is to shade the creek.
Is the preference, okay, so the preference would be, if we could, is to shrink the Greenway boundary to not include Kellogg Creek? I mean, I can explore that further, but...
From my perspective, only with regard to views.
Okay.
That's my concern, is about...
That's the only difference between the Willamette Greenway and sort of our HCA, WQR, really, right? Is there really much else?
Yeah, I mean, the HCR and water quality resource is going to encourage trees along their riparian plantings to provide shade. So,
which is at odds with protecting views.
What I could, I guess what I want to do in terms of a response is to be more maybe precise in the language, and we can talk about restoration of the creek and protection of the creek, and then in terms of views, we can be more precise about where those views are important in terms of Kellogg Creek. And I think where they might be important is from Dogwood Park and from viewpoints in Kronberg Park. So you could, again, be intentional about the design, be intentional about how you frame those views. So you don't have to open the whole thing up, but you are saying, oh yeah, there is a water body there, there's a feature there that we want people to know about and understand and appreciate.
Well, I do think as I recall, the Kronberg plan calls for two kind of overlooked places.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's not like all of Kronberg has to be open to the...
But since that's in our plan, does it really need to be protected in any way in our comp plan? Since it's in our park master plan.
And since we have the HCA and the
WQR to protect the natural resource as it is. So if we can take somehow if there's a process that's not insane, that we can take Kellogg completely out of the Willamette Greenway, I'm fine with that.
Well, I can explore that a little bit further. I know my initial conversations with the state about it was a complicated process, and it was not impossible, but it's sort of so what would happen if we wanted to do that as part of the review process? It probably kicks our plan review up to LCDC to review rather than through the normal post-acknowledgement plan process, which is the only way it would get to LCDC is through an appeal of our plan. So that would be the difference, I guess. I don't know. I can check on it. I'm mostly interested in if everybody wants to explore that further, we can explore it further. If we were designing a somewhat simpler process here.
Well, and I also appreciate and maybe like the idea of exploring, if you can get specific about points for views, I mean, that would make me more comfortable than essentially the entire boundary of every,
I think we can do that for Kellogg. I think it's a little bit harder for the river, but it's not impossible for the river. I mean, because we know.
I'm interested in that.
We know it's the road
then,
ends that are the important parts, and then from the parks and the trails along the parks. But again, I think it's a little bit more difficult in those linear where we have those linear features. I don't. And the intent of the language in the code was in the latest phase of Milwaukee Bay Park is you would be very intentional about the landscaping. You would frame your view. Okay, we've got other stuff to cover, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I'll check on it. I'll check on
Thank
this
you.
and try to get back on it.
All right, great. So if we're done with Willamette Greenway, we'll move on to natural hazards. And a couple of the major things that came up during the CPAC meeting were the discussion of encouraging development in kind of low-risk hazard areas while discouraging or outright restricting development in high-risk areas. And one of the major things that came up was on some of the city-owned properties, including Coho Point, which is within the floodplain. How do we craft language that, where we are discouraging development, but not potentially excluding it, especially on sites like that where we have, you need to balance the needs of the community as it relates to housing and economic development versus natural hazard protection. And are there ways that if they can be adequately mitigated, how do you come up with language related to that? So if you look at policy 7.1.4, we actually combined two previous policies. We had separate policies previously where one encouraged development in low-risk areas and one discouraged development in high-risk areas, and we combined those into the new policy 7.1.3. So that's one area where we would like to get your input on. And then one of the other things that came up at the CPAC meeting was just how extensive we need to be in talking about seismic hazards. A couple of CPAC members had noted that we talk a lot about flood hazards and liquefaction and some other natural hazards, but didn't really touch a whole lot on seismic hazards. I think part of the reason for that is that seismic hazards has impact on basically the whole city. So it's kind of a little bit redundant, but we did insert that into a few places in some of the policies, as you can see in the track changes version that starts on page SS58. So we would welcome your comments on this set of policies.
I think the combination of those two policies makes sense to me.
Yep. agree.
This section was pretty
Yeah.
good.
7.2.3, rather than identify strategies to ensure,
7.
because that sounds like, well, we identified the strategies.
Employ.
Good, done with that.
We could employ strategies.
Yeah, or, something that says
That
do it.
strategy's name be
Do the
Denny.
thing.
Oh, yeah, just
Get it
identify.
mapped.
Gets full benefits, too.
Or we could ensure.
Just, get rid of the first 3 words.
Yeah.
And not to get into a big discussion here, but today I went to a presentation that Clean Water Services provided to Metro about drones, because we're looking at using drones for some of our regulatory aspects.
Counselor, can you speak closer to your microphone?
Yes,
Thank
I
you.
heard a presentation today from Clean Water Services about the use of drones that they use for a lot of things, and it's the technology is pretty amazing. And I had asked them, can you use these for better floodplain maps, especially since some of them aren't accurate? And they hadn't used them for that, but they said that they had not used them for that. But the technology it gets down to a centimeter. I mean, it's amazing what the mapping is doing with those drones. So anyway, maybe it's something that, even if we didn't do it citywide, it's something we're on the ground when we know that for development that it's in the wrong spot. Potentially the developer could hire the drone, because these are third-party drones that they're using, a lot of them, and determine whether it actually is or isn't in the floodplain.
It's a lot less expensive than having a surveyor do it. So is it a elevation question?
Well, I know that we've had these issues where we come up and we know, like Rusk Road, when we did that, we know that's not in the floodplain, or that is in the floodplain. Potentially, it could be something that the developer pays for up front that gives us a little bit more data and information. I don't know if we could actually accept it without having to go through a big...
I was going to say, don't they have to be, isn't there official FEMA mapping or something
Yes,
that we have to live by?
That's what we have to live by, is the FEMA mapping, and the FEMA mapping is 30 years old. But they say, the meeting I went to at Metro a while back, they said all you have to do is ask, and they will remap the areas you ask for.
Who, FEMA? Will?
Yeah.
FEMA.
Yeah.
And Nick's been looking at that.
Oh, great.
There's a map adjustment process that is available for anybody to go through. And I mean, the way it's used most often is people that don't want to pay flood insurance.
Right.
And they use it to be remapped so they're out
of the
of the
floodplain.
area, when there's an error in the map. But I believe what will happen with the property out on Rusk Road is they will probably go through that eventually to have it remapped accurately.
Okay.
But this proposal isn't doing as much land changing as the old one.
The other one. All right.
There's still some
fill.
On 7.4, I just wondered, and those will probably get cleaned up eventually, develop programs that inform the Milwaukee. Do we want to say inform the public about increased risks?
Oh,
It says 59.
yeah. I think we have that. That might have gotten missed. Yeah.
And then I've got a question about the intent of that the policy 7.741. I'm not sure what it means to conserve properties. What exactly do we intend to do with the acquired properties? And is it different depending on whether the property is vacant land or has existing structure or structures? I can see we know of an example where there's a property that's maybe then we certainly don't want to conserve what's existing. And so I'd like to I think we need to do a little bit more work on that policy to kind of to more define exactly what the intent is.
Is it the word about conserve? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, think of a
To
way
mitigate
to say
or something.
I mean, something, I don't know. I really don't know what we're planning to do with those properties. Because
Well, I mean, I think the whole discussion came up in the context of properties that we think are not appropriate for development. And so it's like what we did with the residential property on Rusk Road, where we
Right.
bought it and
But what are we planning?
returned it.
The word conserve is problematic, though,
Yeah.
right? Because
Right.
we don't want to conserve that house.
The intent was conserve, like on the conservation side of, natural conservation side of thing, but I can understand conserve meaning maintain.
Right.
Yeah, so we can work on that language.
Are we still, oh no, that's different.
Good catch.
Thanks.
And yeah, if we're all done with natural hazards, we can move on to the fourth and final, which is climate change and energy. And this is obviously one that's, with the recent adoption of the Climate Action Plan, people, including our CPAC members, were wanting to get into some relatively specific language, and where we had to provide some guidance on that, as far as this being kind of a guiding document that then, with the Climate Action Plan, the plan for that plan is to update it, relatively on a relatively normal basis. And so the framework for the climate and climate change and energy policies are to kind of help to guide that and to provide that framework for those periodic updates to that plan. There were some questions about how much of that plan we want to incorporate into the comprehensive plan, at least kind of additional references to the Climate Action Plan to kind of stress the importance of that document. And so we tried to do that. Kind of looking back at the natural hazards section, we also tried to incorporate a lot of the climate change discussion related to that kind of natural hazards, climate change induced natural hazards. So really what we tried to do in kind of these most recent changes was to incorporate the Climate Action Plan a little bit more into it while keeping these relatively high level policies. And then really, to really stress kind of the importance of science, and that this is a unfortunately rapidly changing situation that is probably going to need to be updated on a relatively regular basis, even at the comprehensive plan level. And so we're going to need to be relatively nimble in this section especially. So
One thing I noted at both the CPAC meeting and the Planning Commission was that sort of in an ideal world, we would have done the sort of the background information for the Climate Action Plan, and then set comp plan policies, and then done the Climate Action Plan to carry out the policies. But in this case, having done the Climate Action Plan, we're sort of backfilling the comp plan policies, and we just need to make sure that they're high enough, broad enough, that we're covering everything that's in the Climate Action Plan.
And I'll just add Peter's comments, which I think are in direct contradiction, that he really liked that this is the order it went in, and he felt like that really added something to this process.
But I guess what I'm saying is that we could have gotten there through the background, through a background document. It wasn't just you would have done something very similar had we planned on writing the comp plan policies before the action plan. I think it produced, the way we did it, it produced more content for us to put in the comp plan, but it is sort of backfilling, because normally you'd want the vision and then the comp plan and then your actions.
So 13.1.6 was one of the ones where I was referencing that the why all of a sudden makes it make a whole lot of sense. And it's Joe Edge's comment that this seems to warrant an explicit reference to clustered site development patterns, given greater energy efficiency of attached structures and ability to contribute larger blocks of contiguous open space for reduced heat island effect, improved stormwater management and habitat function, recreation areas, etc. And I think that really struck home to me, even though, I've been steeped in this stuff for a long time. That just calling it out that way, it made you kind of go, oh yeah, that's why you would do that. We, cluster the density and then create more open space so that there's more trees, so there's less heat island. The more shared walls, the less energy expended, all those things. Sort of explaining all that kind of helps it make sense to somebody who's going, why would I want to do that? I want to.
So that's, again, one of those
I think
explanatory notes?
Yeah, I think that's where a sidebar and where you have a little call-out box that says, why is compact or attached housing a better option for the environment? And then you kind of go into that. So I think that would be some place where you can...
the ancillary piece to that of leaving more open space between buildings to create some habitat and some trees and
I
some
agree.
canopy and
Yeah, and some commentary on sprawl, I mean, the 13.15, where appropriate, well, density this close in, of course, is appropriate if we're comparing it to extending the urban growth boundary into farmlands or forestry. So, I think that I just was kind of jumping around a little bit, because the buzz right now is Minneapolis's comp plan update, and they just passed it, and it's very interactive, the website. There are lots of opportunities for those little pop-up explanations, and I think that I completely agree with you. I'd like to see as many of those as possible, because I do think that this language is super dry, and there are lots of opportunities to sort of explain ourselves and to educate. This should be a document that isn't boring. Maybe it's fun to read and interactive, and it doesn't have to be.
Just because he wasn't at the mic, Peter did say, like the climate action plan, which is super fun to read.
Yeah.
Okay. Just putting it up.
You mean for interactive from a formatting standpoint? Or is
The printed version and when we eventually adopt this thing and it's online.
But I mean, is Minneapolis's interactive in a way of...
Yeah, you click
Website.
on, it's a website, and it's basically a web version of the comp plan, and it's very interactive.
Okay, great.
Go check it out. Minneapolis 2040 is pretty exciting.
Okay.
He can't just do side notes. Yeah.
it's official now.
Unless
Now you can
that's the
talk.
end of the comments, and we can.
No, I have one. I have another one. If another comment that was in the commissioner's notes, I would remove. So I'm looking at 13.310, page 61 of the study session, and potentially remove population metrics. Remove population from metrics. I would identify metrics and triggers for when additional planning is needed, but I have concern that we're going to be behind the mark if we're waiting for some big change in population, because
we need to be prefetching that, not reacting.
Because his point was, we'll see displacement first.
Yeah.
The people who can afford to leave for these reasons will be displacing our current residents. So if we're waiting for population, that's not going to be the triggering event. There should be other metrics, and maybe not so specifically defined. I mean, it could be.
More to the point, it takes.
Yeah.
There's a lag time between us saying, okay, now we're going to allow 7-story buildings, and 7-story buildings actually getting built.
Right.
Right, and if we're waiting for the population increase to make those decisions, then we're going to be way behind.
We're too late. Yeah, and we might already be witnessing right now.
Oh, we are.
Yeah.
I
mean, and we if the metrics were something like, median household income in Milwaukee, then we might already be considering some additional planning.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the trigger mechanism needs to be, how that, it's almost like it's got to be constant because it's going to be moving that fast.
But I think that that's part of what you're giving us with the guiding language, is you're giving staff a chance to figure that out. It's part of the update to the climate action plan. So I think that you're just making the language fit with that process.
Well, this is really, again, a direction to have sort of a continual monitoring process, right? I mean, and that's probably another policy or some language in the administrative section of this document of the plan saying we intend to relook at aspects of this every 5 years, 7 years, whatever it might be. But this is what you look at. You've got to consider these things when you're doing that relook.
Anything else in climate change and energy?
So Peter went out of his way tonight and didn't watch some important movie that he should have watched, and instead he came tonight to be here. So.
And I told him, I said, if you come, they won't have questions for you. And if you don't, they will.
Well, I have a really hard time coming to a meeting and not saying something. I find.
Don't feel too bad. It's 8:15.
Did you have thoughts on ways we should shift any of these, or ways we can make it more holistic or robust?
I think the planning team and the comprehensive plan committee really did a good job coming together and putting together these policies. I enjoyed being part of that discussion and going to those meetings the first Monday of each month and for 3 hours and talking about these things, believe it or not, because I think it was refreshing to see the interest that the community had on climate and natural hazards and the greenway and parks. So it was worth the time.
We did appreciate that both Peter and Natalie have been at the last couple of meetings, and Natalie was actually at her very first day, came to the November CPAC meeting, first day working for the city. So, and
she's had some good input.
Yeah.
Definitely, she wasn't shy, and so she jumped right in. And so
I actually thought the last meeting was our best meeting because I felt like it was. Well, for a lot of reasons, but I like the meetings where we're in the whole as opposed to broken up, and this was a more manageable
section of work,
to kind of get your head around and really. So I thought the discussion was really good, and everybody, everybody really participated.
Peter will get to stick around for the next set because the next group we include public facilities in that set of policies, so we'll probably see more of him.
Well, great. So we'll take these and, as I mentioned, we're going to be meeting with NCPRD next week, and then we'll be bringing these back before the CPAC in early January. And just before we sign off, I did want to say thank you to Scott and his staff and Ann. It may shock the council based on how cool, calm, and collected we are, but there are times where we're making edits right before publication time on Friday. And Denny and I happen to be in a conference all day, so I was trying to read policies on my iPhone and submit comments. And
at 3:30, I'm saying, I think it's okay to go.
So, thank you to Scott for helping out with getting everything together.
He's great.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Great job.
A lot of wonderful work and time and effort, and not just from staff, but thanks also to Mayor and Councilor Beatty. It's a lot. This is a big document. I mean, this is a lot.
Yeah.
It's very comprehensive.
All right, with that, we're adjourned.
Oh, no.
No, we're not?
No, I have something real fast.
Too bad.
Yeah.
We're adjourned.
Please don't do that.
We're adjourned.
Okay, at the last meeting, we talked about the CCA dinner. We talked about what information you guys would like us to come back with. There's a couple of pieces of information we now have. So, Oregon City has agreed to just give up their night this year. They won't do their dinner. So that is the June night. It's June 27th. I will not be in town. I will be long gone. So have a great time without me. But Scott is going to be in town, and he thinks he can do it. So those, I think that was the only thing we had to talk about tonight. We'll bring other stuff when we get there.
Will Layla be in town? Because what we were talking about were things where we would probably want Layla.
I cannot make that commitment right now, but I can have that conversation with her. And I'm not even sure she can tell me right now, just because it's several months out and it's summer break for her daughter. But I'll find out.
Yeah.
But it would be cool if we did June.
Can we say yes to that?
Can we say yes to Oregon City?
Okay. No, I need head nods after last week. That's legit. Yes?
I think June would work.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's great. And also, can you tell us when Wichita Park is going to be open?
Yeah, it's unfortunately not changing, so it's going to be spring. They're not going to take down the fence, is my understanding. Well, they've had, every construction project has issues. You get through the first thing, and then the next thing comes up. The latest thing is that they have the wrong slide. The wrong slide was installed. Does not meet the safety regulations. So now we are removing the slide, replacing the slide. I mean, they're just doing their checklist now. Every time they get through another item on the checklist, something comes up. So we've been telling the community, I think it's really safe to say spring.
Oh, well, I think I've been told that I've been telling the community any day now.
Well, so here's the problem. The fence, they don't want people on the grass until the rain is done. And so they have been keeping up the fencing to make sure that the grass will set. So even if they get the stuff installed, I'm just warning the community that it's very possible that NCPRD will not want people on the property while the grass sets. That is what we have been told. It is not my project, thankfully. So even if the slide is the last thing to go, you're still not going to see it open until at least February, because that's not getting installed until at least January.
See, that's not what Catherine has been saying through the fall. I mean, she was saying like December 1, and then... Yeah.
Have you all ever noticed that about 2 blocks from my office in downtown Portland, the waterfront park there gets replanted and reseeded after every single event that they have. Yeah. And the grass just sets like in days. And so why would we need it over a month?
Because that's got a root mass. That grass has root mass. It's under the smashed down dirt from the event, right? So this was
brand new.
Graded,
it's been totally great. Okay.
It was all graded, so this is establishing the roots for the first time. Okay. So if you go in there and walk across it, those footprints will be there for 2 summers.
Okay.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
So. Okay.
It takes a while for the root mass. Once grass is established, it's hard to break it.
Well, I think they rolled sod, didn't they? They didn't plant grass.
Yeah, but you don't have the root mass is the problem. And I think you're right. I think they're trying to get everything set down into...
If it's sod, then...
And that should be quicker, yeah. But it's...
And it's been in for 6 weeks, maybe 2 months.
What I am not in charge of this project. I am telling you what I have been told. I am telling you that you are looking at... But I will also say that after running a parks department, special events take a huge wear and tear. And if you have a lot of people during a rainy season out on that property, you will have problems with your grass. And
well, I certainly understood why they didn't want to have a big party and have, a bunch of people all at once. But definitely, I've been told by NCPRD that, it was going to open by December 1, and then that had slipped a little, and so now this idea that it's not till spring is a change of story.
Well, and I have been having conversations with my team about our projects under promise. Because there's a lot of these out there right now where we're going to run into the same problem with contract changes.
Yeah.
It's a sturdy one.
Okay.
Serves you well.
Thank you.
Okay, we're done, huh?
We're adjourned, right?
I'm not calling that anymore.
Thanks.